All right, so this discussion is going to be all about devolution. We've talked about it before. We're going to talk about it again, look at a lot more examples. And so remember, there are two definitions of devolution. The first one is the breakup of a state into two or more new states. So when the Soviet Union broke up in the 90s, we saw a lot more countries form. As saw Russia form, we saw Latvia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Georgia, a bunch of these countries that were previously united under the USSR. Now they devolved. It's created a lot more new states. We can also look at devolution as a transfer of power, a top-down process from a central government to a subnational or regional government. So an example of that, Kenya's constitution created 47 different counties. You can see them here on the map, and each of them has their own elected government and power over local affairs. And so our prominent example is, of course, Yugoslavia. We talked about this before. It's an example of a state breaking up into multiple states. In this case, we saw one state, as you can see here in the 1919 map, and then in 1992 we saw that 6 new states developed as Yugoslavia devolved. And so this is primarily due to ethnic tensions. You have all kinds of groups of people that sought autonomy. They had nationalist aspirations, but there were a lot of differences between them. So we had the Serbs, the Croats, the Macedonians, the Montenegrins, the Bosniaks, Albanians, Hungarians, Gypsies, Romanians. We had some Germans as well. Lots of different cultures present that really clashed with one another. However, they had some similarities. They had a common language, Serbo-Croatian, and they each had aspirations to establish their own states. So they had this, this common cultural traits, but they had these nationalist, these self-determination movements, and that's ultimately what led to the devolution that we see here in the maps. A big factor of this was an economic reason. They had hyperinflation. I think Yugoslavia reached like 2,500% inflation in 1989. Earnings for workers dropped by 25% in the 80s. So people really lost faith for their socialist economic system in the country. Now, this wasn't uniform across the entire country. Slovenia and Croatia, the northern regions, were wealthier. However, they didn't like that their economic prosperity was being reinvested into the poor southern regions. Therefore, they desired economic independence so that they could reinvest their own money back into their own production. And alongside these economic factors, we saw nationalist movements grow and Eastern European communism fell as we marched towards the end of the Cold War. And that pushed Slovenia and Croatia to pursue full independence. In 1990, Serbia seized 50% of all federal funds of Yugoslavia. So Slovenia removed itself from the Yugoslav fiscal system, the money system, and declared its independence in 1991. And Croatia quickly followed suit as well. And by 2006, followed by a period of so many wars and battles between the different nations, we saw 6 states were established and they had independence. So we saw Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, Montenegro, and Macedonia. And we still see political challenges and territorial disputes in this region today. I don't know if you can see it on the map. We have a little region called Kosovo. If you look at the 1946 map, you can see it. But Kosovo is considered a region of Serbia. However, they have declared independence and they're recognized by over 100 different countries as independent. But countries like Serbia, Russia, and China, they say Kosovo is not an independent country, and they challenge that. And so we still see those disputes today. So what are some factors that impact devolution? Well, physical geography is a pretty big one as well. And so the key here with physical geography is we look at how it isolates groups of people or it divides them, because this keeps them less connected to the central government and it develops distinct cultures and economies, and that fuels regional-based identities. So an example would be Indonesia. Indonesia is over 17,000 islands. So it's very challenging for the administration to exert uniform control, and that leads to a lot of devolutionary pressures in key regions. The Basques and Spain are separated from these mountains, so they've been able to kind of keep their culture distinct, but also developed economy. They have a pretty developed economy as well, and that's a reason that they cite as to why they should achieve statehood. Another concept is ethnic separatism. So this is a reason for devolution as well, at least the pressure for devolution. So when a group feels marginalized or they feel very distinct from the rest of the country, or they have historically had independence, they may demand self-governance. And to prevent any type of potential instability or violence or conflict, the central government may respond to these demands by devolving some kind of powers to the regional or local levels. They obviously don't want to give the territory up, but they'll compromise and give them some power. This image on the left here is from a pro-Catalan independence rally in Catalonia, Spain, and the picture on the right here shows Frontland. It's a political party from Timor-Leste, which is an African country that was advocating for independence from the Portuguese until 1999. So going back to Yugoslavia, the breakup of Yugoslavia into multiple independent states in the 90s was largely driven by these ethnic tensions and separatist movements. Next, we're going to talk about ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is the mass expulsion, imprisonment, or killing of members of an unwanted ethnic or religious group in society. They want to say bye-bye to an ethnicity. Naturally, ethnic groups don't want this to happen, and a solution to this problem is statehood. If they manage their own affairs in their own states and they defended it, they can defend themselves and escape persecution. And so ethnic cleansing can lead to this strong desire for autonomy and self-determination to escape this persecution. So some examples, that the best known example is the Holocaust, where they tried to kill the Jewish people. The Rwandan genocide in Africa is another one, and the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar, which we'll talk about both of these other examples momentarily, starting with the Rohingya crisis. So the Rohingya are a Muslim minority group that are in Myanmar. Myanmar is primarily Buddhist, though, and for decades they faced many human rights abuses and discrimination, as well as a denial of citizenship. I want to talk about it for a second here. So for reference, Myanmar has 135 different ethnic groups. So it's not just the Buddhist versus the Muslim. They have tons and tons of different ethnic groups that are recognized by the government, and they are allowed citizenship. A 1982 citizenship law did not recognize the Rohingya at all, and that kept the nation stateless. And so some examples of discrimination that they faced include forced labor, land confiscation, and arbitrary arrests as well. And we've seen a lot of deaths and killings, of course, to the Rohingya Muslims. And in 2017, Myanmar's military launched very violent crackdowns that displaced over 700,000 of them. We've seen violent insurgent groups like the ARSA emerge, and that's reflect a challenge to the central authority. These insurgent groups have risen in response to Myanmar's actions. So that's led to a lot of challenges to their authority, and of course a lot of violent conflict as well. We've seen local refugee camps be created, and they act as a form of devolved or temporary devolved governance in the states as well. Bangladesh, a neighboring country in particular, has received over 1 million refugees, and that increases political strain and economic pressures. These refugees will compete with locals for jobs, and has also increased competition for resources like water and housing. Now let's talk about the Rwandan genocide, which took place about 30 years ago in the middle of Africa in a small little country here. So Belgium colonized Rwanda during the Berlin Conference and created a rigid ethnic hierarchy that favored the Tutsis minority. When Rwanda gained independence in the 60s, the Hutu majority gained power, and that began cycles of violence and repression that ultimately compiled into a 100-day genocide in 1994. The genocide was carried out by these Hutu extremists, and they dismantled Rwanda's administrative and security structures that provided protection to people. And so if you don't have any type of protection or law enforcement, chaos breaks loose. The prime minister was assassinated, many local mayors were killed, and the armed forces and national police actively facilitated themselves in these killings as well, because there was no accountability. Millions fled the country. That led to mass displacement and regional instability. The genocide destroyed state institutions, and after the Tutsi-led Rwandan Patriotic Front took power, many regions required a complete rebuilding with a new political order. For the most part, all of the services like electricity, water, and schools were non-functional. A 2003 constitution was created, and they dismantled the army and police to develop a new one that would actually promote stability and power. Now let's talk about terrorism, because terrorism is also a pressure for devolution. The use of violence or threats to intimidate or just manipulate people, especially for political purposes. That's what makes something a terrorist act. 9/11, for instance, was there to call out the vulnerability of the United States and demonstrate Al-Qaeda's strength. This terrorist group spent less than $500,000 to kill almost 3,000 people and inflict over $2 trillion in economic damages. So they use force like bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, flying planes into buildings to demonstrate a message or try to manipulate countries to act in a certain way or to create some kind of global narrative. Terrorism will erode trust in the central government's ability to ensure security for their countries. And that's why after 9/11, we saw that air flight security increased tenfold because they wanted to make sure nothing like this happens again. Another example would be in Nigeria. They have an Islamic terrorist group called Boko Haram that has risen up in the years, predominantly in the northeastern region. And as a response to their murders and attacks, the local state governments and local militias have been empowered to try to combat this terrorism. Let's look at a very particular example. I included this because I thought it was a interesting example, but also just a good example of terrorism in general. So the LTTE, the Liberation of Tigers of Tamil, I think it's Ilam, waged a terrorist campaign for about 25 years in Sri Lanka, so that tiny island next to India, because they wanted to establish their own states. So this is a key example of a devolutionary pressure. So they launched terrorist attacks because they wanted their own sovereign state. And what it did is it deepened the ethnic divides between the Tamils and the Sinhalese. I think that's how you say it. Two different groups in Sri Lanka. And this fueled Tamil demands for greater autonomy. It led to the 13th Amendment, though, just a few years after these campaigns started. And it was just simple devolution. It wasn't a new state being developed, but they got some provincial power, so some local authority through this devolution. And that occurred in regions across Sri Lanka, but especially the Tamil majority northern province as well. So they achieved partial success with this constitutional amendment that facilitated devolution, giving groups greater autonomy. So a little bit more about terrorism. Governments may grant devolution to address these grievances like we saw here in Sri Lanka because they want to reduce conflict and restore stability. So the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, the MILF of the Philippines, engaged in terrorism to demand Muslim self-rule. And to address these grievances and reduce the violence, the Filipino government established the BRMM that granted significant self-governance to try to compromise with the terrorist group, to try to appease them. Moving on from terrorism, economic issues can also lead to devolution. So uneven distribution of wealth or uneven standard of living can fuel demands for local governments to try to address these specific needs. Maybe certain countries or certain regions in these countries have more poverty levels. They are going to request more autonomies to try to address and combat these poverty levels. And Catalonia in Spain is different from the rest of Spain because it's wealthier. And so they've demanded greater monetary and fiscal autonomy. And so that led to a 2006 law that gave them more control over taxes. And so now they can control their resources and investments, and they can combat these grievances they had over the central government of Spain collecting taxes because they argued, hey, we're wealthier, let us control our money while you figure out the rest of Spain. And of course, Yugoslavia, we know that hyperinflation and the overall economic collapse of their socialist economy led to these strong pushes for devolution and economic independence for Slovenia and Croatia. And that was one of the major reasons for the Yugoslavia devolution in 1991. That led to the 6 nation-states. Regions with valuable resources can demand control to retain the economic benefits. So they want to have full control over these resources so they can reap the economic benefits. So economic marginalization of the Inuit communities in Canada and the desire to control the Arctic resources led to Nunavut in 1999 with devolved powers over land and economic development. Nunavut is a region and it has control over these resources. So they have now powers, local powers over how the land is used and how the economies are developed because they know what's best for the regions and how to use these resources and how to grow their economies. Struggling regions that may not have good economies may seek devolution to tailor economic recovery as well, to try to get themselves out of economic struggle. And in the Niger Delta region, they have tons of oil, and money, for oil can go a long way because oil is a very sought out resource. However, the region that Niger has a lot of oil in is very undeveloped. There's poor infrastructure, high unemployment, and so they've requested devolution to combat this. Economic grievances have fueled for political pressure, for more tax autonomy. We saw that in Catalonia, and a larger sale of oil profits in the Niger Delta region. That way they can use these profits to try to redevelop poor infrastructure in high unemployment. All right, so we've talked about economic issues. Let's talk about social problems now. So, cultural or ethnic identity conflicts. So, different groups of people have different cultures. They may not always get along, particularly if there's different religions or religious sects, as we see here in the Middle East. It could also lead to discriminatory practices, and so different groups of people want to combat discrimination. We saw that in Rwanda. Looking at Quebec, we're not looking at a genocide, for instance, but the French-speaking Quebecers, they feel very culturally distinct because French is a prominent language in this region compared to the rest of Canada that speaks English. And so Quebec has sought for devolution. And that led to votes in 1980 and 1995 for expanded provincial powers. Now, I can't name any of these powers because both of the referendums failed. So while roughly 40% of the populace voted in favor of increased regional power, the majority decided against it. Over time, though, Quebec has seen greater immigration, culture, and taxation autonomy. In other cases, we see that religious diversity or persecution can prompt regions to seek devolved powers because they want to protect themselves. And another example of this would be in Ireland. So Ireland is predominantly Catholic, while the rest of the UK is predominantly Protestant. And that fueled nationalist movements and led to Ireland's independence and separation from the UK in the 1920s. A little bit more disparities in access to services like education or healthcare. These are considered social services, will fuel demands for local control. So in South Africa, after apartheid, there was all sorts of different social and racial inequalities and discriminatory practices. So the state's new constitution eliminated these traces and devolved social issues like education and housing to the local level. Now, finally, our last concept for this video is irredentism, a state's desire or efforts to annex territory formerly belonging to it. And a great example of this would be Russia, because they claim that Ukraine and Crimea are Russian territories. They reflect territories that have ethnic Russians and Russian-speaking populations. So they belong to Russia, and so they're using military efforts to reclaim and annex back these territories. And so we see for irredentism that a lot of the causes are historical claims, ethnic or cultural ties, nationalism, also just political opportunism in general, and the resources that are within these territories. Now, the effects of irredentism can be devolution to appease the demands, but also maintain national unity, instability over border disputes. We've seen that in the Russia-Ukraine region. We also look at separatist movements, as well as just international tension from strain on the diplomatic relations, because many countries don't support the Russia-Ukraine effort. And we saw that when the United States and many other countries in the United Nations placed sanctions on Russia after they invaded Ukraine in 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really does help me out, and it costs $0. I have some free resources for you in the description down below if you'd like to use them. If you have any AP Human Geography related questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below the video or send me a message on Discord. I'll see you guys in the next video though. Adios.